Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Mind, Your Reality, Your Results, a weekly live show where I speak with an expert in the subject of mindset so you can change your mindset and ultimately get the amazing results that you want in your life. I'm so pleased to be welcoming Wendy Lee to the show today. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, Leah, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Excellent. Well, you guys won't want to miss this. I'm so excited. Also, if we haven't met yet, my name's Leah Fink. I'm the owner of All Thrive, and I give people the skills they need to have amazing personal and professional relationships. If you want to know more about that or book a free consultation, you can go to meetleah.ca. But you are not here for my expertise today alone. You are here to listen to Wendy and find out all the fantastic things she has to offer. So if you have any questions or comments as we're going through the show, please put those in the comments box. Even if it is after the show and you have some questions, you can still put those in there because we can get back to you with your answers. So Wendy, as I love to always start off, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into the LeadHERship revolution?
Yes, thank you so much. So, it's kind of a very to-do thing when somebody says, tell me about yourself, and you tell them what you do. So I'm going to start with that, and then I'm going to work backwards.
Please.
So right now, today, I am a certified executive life coach. I deal with transformation, and I work primarily with women. And before that, I was almost about, I'll say it quietly, 30 years in the corporate world, with my last position being senior vice president of HR, right? Whoop-de-doo. That was a lot of stuff. And you would think with all of that clout and all of that information that I just came out of the womb being a leader. Not true. I was what I considered the least likely person to be a leader and then to be the LeadHERship lady to be talking about leadership. And I'll tell you why. I had a lot of things that happened growing up, as we all do. We all have a story that kind of put a little squash on my self-esteem, who I was in the world. Not a little, a lot. I was super shy. I didn't want to express my opinion. I would be the person on the outside. And a lot of that came from just not feeling safe, secure, and being able to feel like I had a voice and that I mattered. And so, what did I do instead? I learned early on, first starting in school, if you work really hard and you do good and you do what the teachers say, guess what happens? They love you. Automatically, you're the teacher's pet. And so I started realizing, oh, if I can act out this role, I get this love, attention, belonging, this feelings of this, right? So I just applied that throughout my life. I applied that when I was going through college. I applied that when I went through and did my career. Every rung of the ladder, I was the hardest working person. I gave all I could, all of it, right? And I did end up being a good leader, but it wasn't an overnight process. But I was a good leader at the expense of my well-being, and I didn't even know it till I came to this breaking point where I was having this super amazing career, feeling I was so successful, simultaneously having this not so fun life, being a relationship with a narcissistic partner. So I was basically having narcissistic abuse and being in this career and showing up what I thought like a fraud. The truth is, both of those energies come from the same place. And that led me to a life coach, and it completely changed my thinking. And from there, I was like, oh, okay, I think I want to do this. So at the height of my career, I left the corporate world and started LeadHERship Revolution because I really wanted to help more women understand we're already the leader. We might have just been separated from it at birth, but it's there. And trying to get them connected back to it, that is my life's mission.
Wow. Well, that's a beautiful story, first of all. I also want to thank Robert for showing up. He's saying another great presentations. Whoop de doo. He loves this part of LeadHERship. So thank you for joining,
Thank
Robert.
you, Robert.
And what I was really thinking is, as you were sharing your story, because I do a lot of work with leaders as well, and looking at this piece of power that You know, a lot of leaders, you're assigned some sort of power for your role. They have these responsibilities, and how much it relates to your personal sense of power, your personal sense of how much you believe you can influence and change the world around you, right? As a leader, you have influence and change over maybe these other pieces like you would have had over other employees. But just that personal sense of, do I even believe I can change my own world is such a starting point.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what, Leah, that's exactly where it starts from, because this little pivot, AKA breakdown, that we all experience at some point in our lives.
Yeah.
So you're perfectly normal if you're going through that, or you've experienced that, or you're going to. That's part of it. Is that what I realized is that I was completely in my uber masculine, and I wasn't bringing in my feminine energy, which, by the way, men and women have both sides.
Yeah.
And when I got that breakthrough and understood what was happening and why I was doing it, when I returned to work, I showed up differently because I had a deeper understanding of myself. And almost that's the only part that I had to do. I had to get back connected with myself. And I showed up after this retreat that I went on. And when I walked in, many people came up to me and said, I don't know what happened to you, but something is different. And there was this one particular person that worked for me, and it was the kindest thing that she could have ever said. She said, you're a great boss. You go to bat for us. You're good at, creating our team. You're good at making us feel, being seen and heard. You make a big difference for the company, but you've always been a little standoffish. And I was really surprised at that. Sometimes we get so professional in what we're doing, and we don't show up as our true authentic self. We kind of put on this armor that I'm at work and I'm doing this thing and I'm the leader, so I can't be vulnerable. But when I came back and my heart was open a little bit more, that's what people leaned into. And as the head of HR, I dealt with employee relations issues all day long. And I was able to do it in a way that was more human instead of going by the book and being the leader. And my example allowed other people to say, oh, maybe I can lean into that and be a leader exactly where you are. You don't have to have a title to be a leader, but you do have to say, okay, if I want my business, my position, my career to really be fulfilling for myself and others, this is where you look first. What's holding you back? Well, how are you showing up authentically? Because doing that, automatically, you're going to filter that out, and people are going to get curious and say, I want some of that. That's really what it is. So you got to put in the work for yourself. And it's kind of an inside out version, right? If you can imagine, I mean, that's how it works. I'm the boss, so I have all the ideas. No, I'm the boss of me. You're the boss of you. I might be the coordinator, the orchestrator, but I feel like every interaction is about healing and connection, and that our work, our career is really this bigger vessel that's allowing people to come together at a certain time for a reason. Yeah.
There's so many fantastic things that you just mentioned there. And just to bring it back for a sec, this concept of different behaviors that are valued in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, our workplaces are generally based on a very traditional energy, directive, less relational, less vulnerable approach. And I actually do believe it's like a spectrum of behavior. And there's totally times to use that behavior, right? There's times you want to be directive, that more masculine energy. And at the same time, you need to be able to move on that spectrum to that space of more vulnerable, more relationship focused and less task focused. And it's really powerful, I think, especially in the workforce, to acknowledge that particular one of there are values to this way of being, and it's not the only way. So I love that you're talking about that. And I'm really curious. So as you went forward on your journey and you started embracing this, and now you're helping people, what's kind of the first step to help them on this new exploration?
Yeah, and thank you for that. And yes, it really is about, it's not letting go of either side. It's bringing them in. And sometimes you need to, get in this bucket a little bit. And sometimes you need to it's not a 50-50, depends on what you're doing and how you're doing it and where it's needed. So it's kind of always this available energy to you. When I'm first starting to work with my clients, what I'm trying to get at is, where is their mindset right now, right? Where are those limiting beliefs? We've all heard those words before. And there's always a truer, deeper version that's been called for them to step into. But of course, our mind chatter, right? Our mind, boy, if we could just turn that off, everything would be wonderful. So what I really tell people is, bring that along and understand that that's just a pattern. That's a survival pattern that you've had, and say, thank you very much. It helped you get through whatever you needed to get through. And now what can we extract from those situations that have a lot of superpowers, right?
Yeah.
Think about any time in your life when you've gone through something tough or hard, which I even hesitate to say it like it's the opposite of good. It's all part of it, right? When you go through that part of it, we all come out of the other side a different version.
Yeah.
Right? So what I really try to look at is, where are you now? Where do you imagine, and what would be the possibilities if you really stepped in and owned, call it the ownership, and own those pieces? And what's standing in the gap? What is preventing you from moving forward? Because here's the thing, we're doing this individual work, but there is this higher level energy that is going on here. I just got back from a leadership conference. And what I love about all of this is that there's more and more and more conversations about this now, because people are stepping up and saying, oh, maybe this last 3 years was to get our attention, to really shift the mindset, not just in our personal lives, but in the career or business life as well. And how do we play a role in that? So I cannot always see what somebody else can see in me. And as an executive life coach, I can see in people what they cannot see. And that's not because I'm a magical person. I get that from a higher source for sure that comes through. And then through truth, we explore what's coming up, because you have the answers. You have the answers. I have the answers for myself. You already know what's best. You're just maybe smothered under a little programming that needs to be excavated a little bit. And then I can hold that space to do that. So it can be a little scary, but can also be very liberating when you're like, oh my gosh, there I am. Right. And then you show up in this new way. And it's quite a beautiful unveiling.
Yeah. I love that. And that is this work, isn't it? It's a little bit scary. It can take a little bit to take that first step and recognize what you might need to look at, I think, is a piece that comes along with that as well. And a bit of fear around that, fear around change.
Yeah.
I'm sure is something you get a lot if you've been in this pattern for a long time. And what is, I guess, how do you help people when they do get in that fear point? Or what would you recommend if someone's listening to this and feeling a little bit of that hesitation?
Yeah. So a couple of things just to start with. You're not broken and you don't need to be fixed, right? There's nothing wrong with us. It's just your being will start getting uncomfortable when it's really just trying to get back to the best version of yourself that you've already been, but have changed. So when people start getting those fears, that's why, for me especially, I still have a life coach. I still have a coach that I work with. To be able to bring it back and ask the very first question, which is that thought true? Right? Because we just assume that all of our thoughts are true. I like to call my thoughts big fat liars. 99% of them. 1% of them are awesome. But 99% of them is usually somebody else's voice in your ear. It could be your parents. It could be, a comment that somebody made while you were growing up. And you took that and spun it into, I'm not good enough. So now I'm going to change my personality in order to be liked and accepted. So to know that you're going to first accept that the fear is going to come up, great. It's part of the healing cycle, first of all. So our first reaction to that is we're going to resist it. Okay, great. That's okay too. Bring that along. We're not going to bypass anything. We're going to feel all of the feelings and they all get to come. And then you get to the point where you start questioning it, getting curious about it. What is that really about? What is it really trying to show me? Is there somewhere that still needs a little love and compassion that I have not looked at? Because you've already gone through the hardest thing you ever have, more than likely, that are bringing up these feelings. It feels scary because we're at the point of decision. We're in decision. When you're in the decision where you're before that line to step over, that's what feels scary. As soon as you jump over, it's like, oh, there's a new possibility here. I can have a different choice. So just staying with them and allowing the feelings to come up, allowing the emotions, talking it out, and then imagining, is it true? Most of the time it's not. Where is it coming from? And then now from this point, now that we have discovered it's not true, what could be possible? And what could be your next step? Not the whole thing, just your next step, because we like to figure things out, but it doesn't work that way. You can have a good kind of plan, but until you make that next step, you don't really get all the information get revealed to you. But when you do take the next step and you're in that new energy, then things start showing up and you're like, oh, interesting. I mean, even me showing up on your show today is because I followed a next step that took me to a next step. And then it was like, oh, now I'm on your show today. I didn't have to figure out a darn thing.
Well, that is a beautiful natural ease when you can get to that space. And one of the things I particularly liked and wanted to touch on that you talked about is, and you kind of mentioned it a couple times, is this fear that we also have of disconnect with others, right? And that I believe is one of our core needs, is that piece of belonging, acceptance, however you want to define it. And that also does play into people's fears with this work. If I change, will I still have the same people? If I find a different part of myself, will someone judge me for it? And it's easy if someone judges you for the fake part, or it's a little easier, I guess I should say, because then you can go, oh, well, that's not really me anyway. When you get to that deeper level, you really have to say, I'm putting myself out there. I know you talk a little bit about vulnerability.
Yeah.
And that is a vulnerability to share with people. I also want to say, Robert, thank you. Yes, possibilities require abilities. Totally. Yes. That you're putting this out, and that it really plays into all of this. And, I guess I'm just kind of curious, would you like to talk a little bit more about this piece of vulnerability as well?
Yeah. So I want to add on Robert, because Robert, you seem like you're a word person, and I love words. The word that I like to use is, it is our responsibility, right? To take this on. And not only when we do this work, we heal backwards and forward just by doing it ourselves. But I like to take a little spin on responsibility. I like to say response.ability. When you start doing this work, you have the ability, as you start to really get to know yourself, to respond in a different way. But when you're not, and you're in the suffering part of it, you just feel like, okay, I have a fixed mindset because that's what you needed to survive. My only option is this one thing. But when you start to expand, you're like, ooh, I got lots of options. And yes, it can feel very vulnerable because you are taking a chance. There's this great law. It's called the law of sacrifice. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's when we're moving to the next level. And I don't even like to use the level up. When we're moving to the next level, back to who we really are, we do have to sacrifice and leave behind the person or the pieces of our personality that we've become in order to have a sense of belonging and to fit in and safety and all the things, whatever your hierarchy of need is, right? It's an automatic thing that we do. And you do sometimes have to let go of, and sometimes there's some mourning around that.
Yeah.
But there's also this big piece of joy as you keep discovering more and more. And sometimes it's pieces of you that you have to let go of, and sometimes it's people around you. And it will just naturally happen. Like you don't have to get your list out and say, okay, today, this person's leaving. Nope, nope, nope. It doesn't work that way. And that's why it's so interesting with the concept of leadership and starting the work here. And it is vulnerable, but you know what the greatest thing about vulnerability is? Sometimes vulnerability can be defined as, you're vulnerable, you're weak, you're small. And especially if you've gone through some traumatic experiences. I'm a sexual abuse survivor, and I didn't have a safe space. So for me, vulnerability meant I'm going to be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
But when you get into that sovereign place and you have that confidence, which just comes with practice, then what you get on the other side of vulnerability is, first of all, you get to learn how to do boundaries in a way that is protective and safe, but not in a way that prevents the energy from coming in, right? Not where you build a wall, but you have a little, I call it the bouncer at the club, right? Okay, do you get to come in? Let me see. Yes, give me your $5. I'll put your wristband on, go have a good time. You get to decide what energy comes in and out. But the greatest pieces of vulnerability is connection comes with that. Real connection. Having a sense of collaboration that you can connect with people, being seen, right? Having this feeling of awareness. There's so many things that come with the other version or the continued version of vulnerability. And it doesn't mean that you're a pushover. It means that you are sovereign in who you are. And you just feel that, right? When you're somebody that has an open heart, man, that feels so good to be around that person and can still say, hey, that's not for me, or that's not okay, or I can't do that today, or whatever it is. And you get to choose your choices the way you want to. Okay, now we're doing it.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% you with you. You're going to so many wonderful places here. And I want to make sure Cavaliers joined us and has some great comments. And I really want to hear your opinion on them because I have some beliefs as well. So they're saying, I respect any woman who's truly a leader, but I find it a bit worrisome. We want to push people to be leaders for themselves when we're supposed to have leaders who have a bigger goal, not so. It seems a lot of leadership discussions in the West are centered around yourself. I feel there's some underlying selfish reasons, a lot of women leadership, that it's going to give women a bad name. I'm a man and I've been sexually abused. It seems there's an underlying male hate that's charged in these discussions, which are not inclusive but exclusive. We're becoming a very evil society, with all respect. And first of all, thank you for sharing that with us and joining this conversation.
Yes.
I would love to hear your thoughts, Wendy, and then I would love to contribute some thoughts to this as well.
Absolutely. First of all, I want to say that I see you and I hear you, and I'm totally understanding your response to those comments. And so I don't want to just bypass that.
Yeah.
And, that's why in the beginning, when I started off and I said that even though we're talking about feminine energy, we're talking about those pieces that are in men and in women, because it's not about that the whole system is broken and it's somebody's fault, right? It's not about that. It's about, because I know for a fact when I was in the corporate world and worked alongside a lot of men, they have the same feelings that we do, right? Men and women share the same feelings. We don't want to work so much that we give all of ourselves away. We do sometimes feel not confident. We do sometimes feel like a fraud. We do sometimes feel like we're not showing up truly. So there is this balance that's being called. The reason that I do the leadership revolution is because I'm coming it from my vantage point. And leadership, even though it certainly emphasized the feminine, the woman side, it's really talking about the feminine energy, right? Embracing that, because it takes so much energy to not be who we are. And we don't want toxicity in at any level. So for myself at least, and I do know that sometimes there is a culture that in order for this to be right, the other thing needs to be wrong. I am not a proponent for any sort of right and wrong. I'm a proponent that by me, myself, showing up in this new way, this helps heal all of that. It helps put that energy out there that supports and makes the greater good for everybody. And so that's why this comment is so welcomed, because it's needed to be talked about and to say these things. And so I really, really appreciate that comment, because truth is we're all in the same boat, right? We're all in the same boat. And if you've experienced some sort of trauma, you're going to feel those things too. And you're going to divide out into those portions of yourself that helped you get to survival mode. So I appreciate the comment and to have the open conversation about it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. When I love actually the two commenters we've had for this show have both been male in a
Yes.
leadership discussion, which I do believe is so important. I can very much empathize what Cavalier was saying also with a bit of the worry about man hate and this idea that it's this opposed faction.
Yeah.
And really when you're talking about this piece of individual leadership versus having a larger goal and that everyone has to be a leader of themselves, this is where I see that power as well, is that I've met plenty of leaders who have great intentions, who are trying really hard, and they're not having the impact that they want. Right. And so you probably met a boss who seems nice, but is maybe clueless, said something that you're like, oh my God, how could you even think that? And the piece for me is that they haven't done maybe all of this work to be aware of what their patterns are. Right. And so, and this is for guys or for men and women as well, is that when you can't be aware of what's happening in yourself, you can't be aware of your impact on others, then you can't lead yourself or others in a true capacity. And, of course, things like gender dynamics are going to play into that. Past situations for everyone, different people have different trauma, and that's going to play into it. So it is this complex thing. And I really appreciate you coming with great questions and comments, because that does make for a really rich discussion. And that's so important in this.
And if we don't have those rich discussions, and I'd like to add on that, because Leah, you see, I'm over here, yes, 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 right? The truth is, and sometimes this stings, based on my history, and same with the comments.
Yeah.
If I hadn't done this work, it would be so easy for me to have these feelings about the person or the personality or the gender that was imposed on me. But because I did this work first, working on yourself and doing the self-ish, putting yourself first, is the first step. It's just not me. It's I do this so that then I have more compassion for myself, which means I have more compassion for you, whoever it is that's in front of me. And I can see that, because that's exactly right. There is a lot of trauma-led leadership. That's why a lot of people go into leadership, because we're trying to prove ourselves, right? We're trying to see, look how good I am. And I'll work hard and I'll work hard. And sometimes we do a good job on it. And sometimes it comes out a little sideways because we're still in the process, right? So I feel like the leader that is super in charge and listen to me and you do what I say is the same as the leader that doesn't have all the answers and maybe gets a little bit shy. It comes from the same energy. And the thing that sometimes was the hardest for me is that when it gets reflected back in that way, it's really showing me in my heart the pieces that still need attention. Yeah. So this is a co-creation. So I love that we're talking about this.
Yeah. Well, and to the points that you're making, one of the pieces I see a lot of from both this place of big T, small T trauma, whatever you want to call it, past experiences, is people love black and white.
Yes.
Right? People would love an answer that's lead this way, say this thing, this is going to work.
Yeah.
And that comes to especially pieces too, like men are bad, women are good, or women are bad, men are good. Like
Yes.
those are all people seeking this black and white, easier way of being, which just doesn't exist in healthy things. So that's why these discussions are so important. I also, we're already over time, but this has been so good. I don't want to end it. But I actually think you have a great gift for people that really plays into what we've been talking about here.
Yeah. So since we've been talking a lot about vulnerability and having such a great vulnerable conversation, I have it's a guide. It's for leaders and it's called the Vulnerability Advantage. And it really is just a guide that says, what are some of the things that we get when we're in that vulnerability piece? Of course, with boundaries, of course, with understanding all of those things. We're not just going to go willy-nilly. And when we really lean into, and we already know the answers, right? Anything that I'm saying, you get to take the pieces that work for you and the other pieces that don't, they can be left for somebody else that needs those pieces.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the Vulnerability Advantage Guide for Leaders.
Excellent. And that is in the description along with Wendy's contact info. So I certainly have enjoyed our conversation. I think people should reach out, definitely take advantage of that and connecting with you. And I just want to thank, first of all, our commenters today had such excellent points. And of course, you as well, Wendy, for being here. This was such a great discussion.
Thank you, Leah, so much. Be well.
Excellent. And thanks everyone for watching. Have a great week. And remember,